He picked up his 3 young daughters for a weekend visit, and never brought them home. Days later, their bodies were discovered near a remote campground in Washington state. Now, the FBI is leading one of the most urgent manhunts in recent U.S. history. If you want more fact-checked true crime stories like this, subscribe to Behind Closed Doors so you never miss a case. Friday, May 30th, Wenatchee, Washington. 32-year-old Travis Caleb Decker was scheduled to pick up his 3 daughters, Paityn, age 9, Evelyn, age 8, and Olivia, age 5, for a court-approved custody visit. Their mother, Whitney Decker, expected them home by 8 p.m. that night. But 8 p.m. came and went. The children never returned. Whitney called police. Authorities issued an Endangered Missing Person Alert, EMPA. But because of the strict criteria, it was not classified as an Amber Alert, raising questions that would spark outrage later. Police began tracking Travis's movements. Wenatchee police said he was homeless, living in his vehicle or at hotels/motels or campgrounds. Surveillance footage placed his truck near Leavenworth, a rugged area surrounded by wilderness, trails, and rivers. Investigators grew more concerned. This wasn't a father running late. Something was wrong. At about 3 p.m. on June 2nd, Chelan County deputies located Travis's abandoned truck near Rock Island Campground. Nearby, down an embankment, they made a horrifying discovery. The bodies of all 3 girls, Paityn, Evelyn, and Olivia, were found. Each with plastic bags pulled over their heads, and zip ties binding their wrists. The official autopsy later confirmed their cause of death, asphyxiation. This was not an accident. This was deliberate. The crime scene told its own story. On the tailgate of Travis's truck, investigators found bloody handprints. On the plastic bags and the zip ties, they found DNA matching Travis Decker. It was enough to formally charge him with 3 counts of first-degree murder, 3 counts of kidnapping. The charges were filed even as he remained on the run. For the community, the shock was unbearable. These weren't just names on a police report. They were 3 sisters, full of life, always together. Neighbors called them open-hearted and inseparable. Now, a town that had once heard their laughter was left in silence. And then there was the father. Who was Travis Decker? At first glance, nothing about him screamed danger. His ex-wife's attorney told ABC News there had been no prior red flags. He was described as an engaged father despite instability. There was no known history of abuse, no prior convictions for violence. But Travis carried a heavy past. He had once served in the U.S. Army, where he gained survival and navigation training. He had been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder and borderline personality disorder. He struggled with finances, and with stability. And yet, nothing in his past had pointed to an act like this. Which made what happened at Rock Island Campground even harder to comprehend. By June 3rd, just 1 day after the girls were discovered, the case escalated into a full-scale fugitive pursuit. The FBI, U.S. Marshals, Chelan County Sheriff's Office, and Washington State Patrol coordinated one of the largest search operations in the Pacific Northwest in recent memory. Warnings went out: Travis Decker was armed, dangerous, and still at large. The scale of the operation was massive. Helicopters and drones scanned tree lines and riverbeds. K-9 units searched campgrounds, cabins, and rocky outcroppings. SWAT teams cleared abandoned structures and caves. Roadblocks were set up to monitor every possible exit route. Agents moved methodically, but days turned into weeks without an arrest. Because this wasn't any suspect hiding in the woods. Investigators knew he could build shelter, hunt, skills that could keep him alive in the wilderness for weeks without support. He knew how to navigate with minimal gear. How to disappear in dense terrain. On top of that, digital forensics revealed that shortly before the murders, he had been researching how to relocate to Canada. This fueled fears that he might try to slip across the border, or had already gone. On June 4th, just 2 days into the manhunt, there was a reported sighting in Idaho. For a moment, hope surged. But law enforcement later confirmed it was not him. Search patterns adjusted. Investigators expanded the perimeter beyond Chelan County, pushing into surrounding states and coordinating with Border Patrol agents. By mid-June, the U.S. Marshals released digitally altered images of Decker showing how he might disguise himself. Versions depicted him with a shaved head, with facial hair, or with glasses, designed to prepare the public for every possibility. A reward of $20,000 was announced for credible information leading to his capture. While agents scoured the mountains, Wenatchee and surrounding towns mourned. On June 20th, hundreds attended a candlelight vigil. Teachers remembered 3 empty desks. Friends left flowers and toys outside the family's home. The community described a paralyzing fear. Parents kept children indoors. Hiking trails that once bustled with families fell silent. If you want more verified updates as they happen, subscribe. We'll only post vetted facts. On July 2nd, authorities said blood DNA linked Decker to the scene. On August 19th, the state crime lab reported Decker's DNA on the plastic bags and cable ties. This forensic breakthrough solidified the charges already filed against him, but it did not bring authorities any closer to an arrest. By mid-July, over 100 agents were dedicated to the search. Entire campgrounds were shut down to allow sweeps. Rangers warned visitors not to hike alone. Families canceled camping trips across Chelan County. Law enforcement kept pressure on possible escape routes, including north into Canada. Chelan County Sheriff Mike Morrison addressed reporters. "We will search as long as it takes. Days, months, or years. These girls deserve justice. And we will not stop until Travis Decker is found." His words captured the determination, but also the frustration of a manhunt that felt endless. By August, Decker had been missing for nearly 2 months. But the deeper question lingered: how could a father described as loving end up here? The manhunt had consumed entire agencies, drained resources, and terrified a region. But the questions this case raised were only beginning. From the moment the details became public, one question hung over the case. Why wasn't an Amber Alert issued when the girls were first reported missing? Authorities explained that under state guidelines, an Amber Alert requires clear evidence of an abduction, typically by someone outside the family. Because the girls were with their father, a custodial parent, the case didn't fit the criteria. For many in Washington, that explanation felt devastating. Whitney Decker, the girl's mother, insisted from the start that something was wrong. She begged for urgency. And in hindsight, she was right. The failure to issue an Amber Alert has become one of the most heavily scrutinized elements of this tragedy. Parents, advocates, and lawmakers have since called for reforms to the Amber Alert system, arguing that children at risk from their own parents deserve the same immediate protection as those abducted by strangers. The case has also exposed troubling gaps in how courts handle custody and mental health. Travis Decker, who was a former U.S. Army member, diagnosed with PTSD and borderline personality disorder, who struggled with housing instability, at times living out of his vehicle. And yet, he was still granted visitation rights with his daughters. Whitney's attorney told reporters bluntly, if Travis had received consistent treatment, and if the courts had weighed his instability more carefully, those girls would be alive today. It raises a larger systemic issue. Courts often face impossible decisions balancing parental rights with child safety. Without more resources for mental health evaluation and monitoring, red flags can slip through unnoticed, sometimes with catastrophic results. The Devil's Den murders in Arkansas shocked the South. But this case, the Rock Island Campground murders in Washington, shook the entire country for a different reason. It shattered assumptions about safety in custody exchanges. It exposed the gaps in emergency alerts. And it forced families everywhere to confront an uncomfortable truth: sometimes, danger comes from where it's least expected. Through it all, the most important truth remains simple: 3 children are gone. Paityn, gentle, thoughtful, known for her kindness. Evelyn, curious, bright, always asking questions. Olivia, the youngest, adored by her sisters, always chasing after them. Their lives should have been just beginning. Instead, their names are now part of a case that will echo for years. What remains is grief. And a question: when will justice be done? The Travis Decker case is not just about a manhunt. It's about systems that failed, alerts that came too late, courts that lacked safeguards, and a nation struggling with how to protect children caught in the middle of custody disputes. But it is also about remembrance. About 3 young sisters whose lives mattered, whose futures were stolen, and whose story demands we do better. What changes do you think should be made to custody rulings and emergency alerts to protect children in the US? Share your thoughts in the comments. I read every one. And if you want more fact-checked, cinematic true crime stories like this, subscribe to Behind Closed Doors and turn on notifications. More cases are coming.